What's up, guys? Horrorman back for another review. So today we're going to take a look at the Scream Greats Killer Klowns from Outer Space Slim figure. Now this is a Series 1 character from Trick or Treat Studios' new line of figures, and this is going to be a smaller scale figure than we're used to with Trick or Treat Studios, so this hopefully will fit in more with like the NECA stuff, so we'll go ahead and look at some size comparisons later on. But yeah, this is an interesting line that they started here. It definitely mirrors like the old movie Maniacs and NECA cult classics. You know, it's got that classic carded packaging, but you do get that nice clear window to showcase the figure. So it is really cool to see this style packaging alive and well, because it's kind of what I remember, because I definitely started with the movie Maniacs line. So definitely some nostalgia here. So just taking a look at that packaging, it just says Scream Greats at the top left corner, it says Series 1 on the right corner, and then it just says Killer Klowns from Outer Space, and then you get the Slim name on there. Over to the back of the package, you do get the Killer Klowns movie logo, nice close-up shot of Slim, and then you get the Scream Greats logo toward the bottom, along with the UPC and some film rights, Trick or Treat Studios logos, things like that. Got a bunch of different images from the movie itself, so that's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and get this out of the packaging and have a closer look. Alright, so here he is outside of the packaging, and I gotta say, he's definitely a bit bigger than I anticipated. So just kind of getting the measuring tape out here, just to show you just about how big he is. So he's actually over 9 inches tall. He's just over 9 inches, about 9 1/4. And then if you look at him to the top of the antenna, he's almost like 9 1/2 inches tall. So definitely taller than I expected. If you look online, you'll see a couple different facts about how tall he's supposed to be. One of them says 9 feet tall, but then if you look at like the Trick or Treat Studios life-size Slim, like the animatronic, he's 7'2". And then if you just watch the movie, there's a scene of him with Debbie, and she backs up into him, so you could really see how tall he is next to her, and he's definitely not 9 foot tall. I would say he's maybe 7 foot tall because his head is so big. So we'll see how he matches up in scale with like some of the NECA figures a little bit later on. Let's go ahead and start by taking a close-up look at the head sculpt. Alright, so taking a look at the head sculpt here, and you only get one head sculpt with Slim, and I do think they picked a pretty good expression. He's got that like sinister grin going on, and I think the overall sculpt is pretty good. I think the nose is about the right size. I like, again, I like the expression. I like the kind of chin, like just the lumpiness around the lip there. I really like the way they sculpted the antennas, like how the one in the front kind of hangs down just a touch. The hair sculpt looks really good. I like the ear sculpt on here. He's got those huge ears. And overall, you do see some lines in the sculpt, which is nice. Definitely see some toward that grin. You got some lines in the neck, things like that. Over to the other side, again, really nice details in that sculpt. Definitely see some lines in this side as well, in the ears also. The teeth look pretty good on here for the most part. I will say there's a really strong seam line right in that forehead for the sculpt. I did pick through some different ones on the shelf, and the line was definitely more noticeable on certain ones. I thought I avoided it a bit on this one, but you could definitely still see it. And then finally over to the back of his head, you got some really nice sculpt going on in that hair, just those texture lines, things like that. Got a little bit of a, you know, rat tail almost kind of going on, but really nice sculpt overall in here. Definitely has that, you know, classic clown hair. I do think they did a pretty good job on this sculpt, but I really think they missed the mark on some of the painting. Something about the eyes was, I don't know, throwing me off, and I could not figure out what was going on with the eyes. And after looking at my other Killer Klowns figure and just looking at some images online, finally figured out what it is, and they forgot to put the eyebrows over top of the makeup. So he does have the eyebrows here, but he's also supposed to have eyebrows above the makeup here. So it's a complete error on them for that one. And it doesn't make sense because they didn't miss it on any of the other Slim merchandise. So the fact that they missed it on this figure is kind of strange. And even the, marketing pictures of the figure, he doesn't have those eyebrows above it. So it's definitely an error on Trick or Treat Studios' part, so I'm a little disappointed with that. And then the face in general, it should be more like dirty. I feel like they went with this too much of like a clean look on the face, so it doesn't have that kind of dingy, kind of scary feel that the movie had. So just my personal nitpicks, but one of them is not really a nitpick. That's definitely a bit of an error. And since we're really only, getting the aesthetic and sculpt and paint with this line and not getting a lot of articulation accessories, they shouldn't miss like the paint like that. Alright, so taking a look at the collar for Slim here, I do think this looks a little too cartoony, and I know it is like a cartoon clown costume, but the costume in the movie was definitely like a fabric collar, and this definitely comes off as more of that like Toony Terror kind of style. And there really isn't a whole lot of details in the collar. And then over to the back, again, you got that same look like the front. It just has those kind of lines going through, but no real like details in like, tattering or dirty or really anything to make it look that real. The sculpting in the hands looks pretty good, and you do have some paint on the fingernails. He only includes the two hands. On his left hand is just a relaxed pose, and then his right hand will have the trigger finger, and the details in the trigger finger hand are pretty good as well. The details in his onesie are pretty good with the different wrinkles and sculpting, and of course you have those like little crescent moon shapes all down the middle of that onesie, and you'll still get those same wrinkles into the back of the onesie. You also get this cool little design wrapped around his bicep, and then the sleeve itself is a bit flared out. And then finally down to the bottom of the figure here, you can see how the onesie kind of flares out just a little bit, and then you have these ruffled legs here, which look really good. I do like the sculpting on those. And then of course you have his giant clown feet, which look really good. Now his feet are huge. He doesn't have peg holes. You do get some of the credits on the bottom of his feet, of course. But yeah, you don't really need the peg holes to keep this guy standing. His feet are huge. And there are some different details in the shoes themselves. You can see the sole, which looks pretty cool. And then you do have the wrinkling in the boots. So overall, pretty nice sculpting all around in the figure and in the outfit. So like I said in the beginning of the review, this figure line is definitely heavily inspired by those old Movie Maniacs and those old NECA cult classic figures in every way, from the choice of characters to the packaging and unfortunately the articulation. And that's where this figure is going to be a bit of a letdown, but if you kind of already know that going in, then it's not as disappointing. But I would definitely consider this a bit of a pre-posed staction figure. So let's go ahead and talk about the articulation here. So you're not going to get much. You will get some rotation in the head sculpt, and you can angle the head sculpt pretty well, which is nice. You definitely need that for a horror character. So not too much. He can't look down much at all, which is a shame since he's so tall. And since you can't move his body, that's a bit disappointing. So yeah, you can't look down too far with that head sculpt. You can move his arms. It's only going to go up about that far on the left arm, the back that far. There's no rotation in the elbow, so it's just pre-posed that way. He can lift his arm a little bit and then come down a little bit. No rotation on the wrist. His trigger finger arm could go up that far, go back that far, and it can go down and out a little bit. And again, there's no articulation at that elbow. The hand can rotate here. So this hand could probably rotate, but the way this is sculpted, it just won't let it rotate. But this right hand will rotate. So I'm not sure if there's articulation in the left hand, but it's not moving. There is no more articulation. That is it. So again, definitely more of a pre-posed staction figure, just like those classic figures. You're only going to get one accessory with Slim, and that's going to be the cotton candy gun. And I think for the most part it looks pretty cool. I like that it has like the little antennas on the top of the gun to kind of resemble his hair. But yeah, some pretty nice details overall for this weapon. I do think it turned out pretty good. You got the nice thick handle on here. It's not like rubbery. It is a harder, thicker plastic, but it definitely doesn't feel like it's going to break at all. Since it is that harder, thicker handle, it is a little bit thick to put in his hand, but it does fit pretty good. And overall, I do think it fits pretty good. Unfortunately, he doesn't pose that well with this gun. You can't get his arm up any higher than that, which is kind of disappointing. He is much taller, so shooting down a little bit isn't a horrible thing. But yeah, he doesn't pose that well. You can rotate the wrist, so if you want to do the gangster style shoot, you might be able to do that. For your first comparison, here he is next to a couple of NECA Toys clown figures. So you have the Pennywise based on the 1990 TV series, and then you have the Pennywise based on It Chapter 2, the movie. And you can see that this Slim figure is a lot taller than these guys. For your next NECA comparison, you have some larger scale figures. In terms of scale, these guys are in scale with the regular Ultimate figures, but the Chucky's a little bit bigger than a normal Ultimate scale. So you have the Predator based on the original movie, you have the Super Shredder based on the TMNT Secret of the Ooze movie, and you can see he's a very large character. And then of course you have Chucky from the TV series. And I do think Slim looks really good with this Chucky, but he is pretty big still compared to Super Shredder and the Predator. Here he is with a couple older NECA figures, and some of these older NECA figures tend to scale just a little bit larger, and then you have characters like Tiny from the Devil's Rejects, which was just big in general. But you can see next to the Michael Myers, he actually looks really good in scale, so I do like the older NECA 7-inch scale figures with this Slim figure. But some of the newer NECA are just a little bit smaller, so they may not scale too well with Slim. For the next comparison, here he is next to NECA Toony Terrors Slim, and he's basically in that cartoony, almost like a Saturday morning cartoon style, which is pretty cool. He is a bit more in that 6-inch scale, so he's definitely going to be much smaller in size than this Slim. And you can definitely see some subtle differences in the paint scheme, but they do look really cool next to each other. And it is worth noting that you can see the eyebrows above the makeup on the Toony Terrors one, but you don't see it on this new Trick or Treat Studios one. So again, that's definitely a flub on Trick or Treat Studios. One thing that both of these figures definitely have in common is they're both hollow. Like, this one has no weight to it, so it's definitely, I can tell that it's a hollow shell. And the same thing with the Toony Terrors, the NECA one, definitely hollow. So these aren't going to be very heavy figures. And here he is with the rest of those NECA Toys Killer Klowns from the Toony Terrors series. So you have Shorty, which was sold separately, and then you have Chubby, which came with Slim, and then of course you have the Cotton Candy Cocoon, and then you have that Popcorn Plant. So really cool to see all these together. Some of the stuff will kind of work with him, specifically the Plant I think scales okay with Slim. But it is cool to see some newer Killer Klowns merchandise. Here he is next to the Movie Maniacs Jason Voorhees from the Jason Goes to Hell movie, and he does have a custom mask made by Custom Freak. And then also the King Shark Build-A-Figure from the old Mattel DC waves. And you can see that Slim is even taller than this huge King Shark. For your final clown comparison, here he is next to some figures that are in 6 and 7-inch scale. So you have the Mafex Joker from the Suicide Squad movie. That's the Jared Leto Joker. And then you have a custom Jack Nicholson Joker. It's a bit of a kit bash of Mattel and some custom parts. Painted by Does Machines 84. And then you have the NECA Toys Heath Ledger Joker from Dark Knight, and that has a custom painted head sculpt by Custom Freak. And then you have the DC Direct Joker from Batman the Animated Series, and he's the only one that's really in that 6-inch scale, but all the other ones are in that 7-inch. And you can see that they fit okay with Slim. He's just a little too big, in my opinion. Alright, and for the final comparison, here he is next to some more NECA Toys figures, and these are going to be in that retro style. So you have the Pennywise from the It movie 2017, and then you have Elvira from The Mistress of the Dark, and then also again you have that Ultimate TV series Chucky, which isn't a retro figure, but he's definitely more in scale with the retro figures. Now I thought this line would be a better scale for Slim, but they actually might be a little too big for him. So I don't know, he's definitely between a 7 and 8 inch scale. So I think he'll, for the most part, look okay with the NECA stuff, but there's times that he's just too big, because Pennywise is a big character, but next to that Ultimate Pennywise, I don't know, he looks a little too big. Alright, so that's my review of the Scream Greats Killer Klowns from Outer Space Slim figure made by Trick or Treat Studios. And overall, I'd say it's an alright figure. I mainly got this because I have a huge attachment to Killer Klowns from Outer Space. So this is definitely the in-between, I would say, of the Mego and the NECA quality. You're just not going to get that same detail like you would with NECA, especially with the articulation. I would have loved to seen that like laughing expression with the mouth open, maybe a hinged jaw, or something to add to this figure, because you really don't have the articulation, so you really need to switch it up with something, and the accessories will generally help you kind of create a different picture or a different pose, even if you don't have that articulation. But in this sense, you really only have one accessory. He can hold it okay, not a whole lot of posing options. But while the lack of accessories and articulation do suck, it's something I was pretty much prepared for, so it's not really a big disappointment, if that makes sense. I pretty much knew what I was getting into. My only real disappointment, honestly, is that the paint and the overall aesthetic, it could have been better. And unfortunately, it does fall short. And where it really falls short is the paint on that head sculpt, unfortunately. Even with the shininess to that hair, it's really not the best paint, unfortunately. It really comes off as like plastic hair. So a little bit of dry brushing, or just, you know, going with a non-shiny finish to the hair would have been much better. And not having the eyebrows, and even that strong seam separating the face and the top of the head sculpt, definitely not something we should see. Now, just like those old NECA and McFarlane figures, they definitely had a lot of things to iron out before they, you know, became a really great action figure company. So hopefully Trick or Treat Studios will stick with it, and these figures will get better as the years go by and as the series go on. And Trick or Treat Studios does have 2 other Killer Klowns available from the same series. So you have Fatso, and you also have Shorty, which is a really popular character. I might get Shorty. I'm not 100% sure just yet. I'm going to probably keep this in my collection and see how I like it. But you don't really get a lot of Killer Klowns figures, and I know that old version of Shorty, like the one from Amok Time, is very expensive at this point. So I might opt for the Shorty as well. So thanks for watching my review. If you liked it, go ahead and leave a like. If you have a comment or question, go ahead and leave that in the comments section below. And if you would, please subscribe. I have a bunch of different horror toy reviews and other action figure reviews on my channel. And until next time, guys, see ya.